Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Before we start our session today, let's pray. Pray begin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidni ilman warzuqni fahman. Okay, this session we are going to continue our previous topic about questioning strategies. In previous meeting, we've discussed about the learning outcome that you are expected to learn at the end of the lesson. And then also we define what is effective question. And then also we discuss about what are the purpose of questions, what type of answer is expected from the student. At least there are 7 of them. Yeah. And then we define also a convergent and divergent questions, which is for convergent questions, the questions is focused on lower order thinking. And then usually it asks about recalling, and there are some expected answer and limited number of answer available. And the second one is divergent questions, is for higher order thinking, and then usually it is an open-ended questions, and you can give a rating scale for the questions. And then usually we give the student close-ended or convergent questions inside of the classroom, and then during the test, if the student are given divergent questions, they are still not used to how to answer that. So we have to make sure that in our daily teaching activity, we also include this type of questions, the divergent. Now we continue to the next subtopic, which is discussing about who are the targets of questions. So the questions can be directed to individual, groups, or the entire class. And if you ask questions with what is it? If you ask questions to the entire class, please make sure that you give some time for the student to answer, and then you can pick a random name so that all of the student can think about the answer and try to answer them in their mind first. This is the mistake some of the teacher do, is that they choose a name and then they ask questions. It's not going to be helpful for the other student, because why? The other student will not think about the answer because you already choose the person that are going to answer the questions. But if you ask the questions first and then let's say, I'll give you 1 minute or half minute to think about the answer, and I will choose random name. All students will formulate their answer in their mind, and everyone will be ready to be mention their name. Or you can randomize the name by using some application on the computer and then show the random chooser name, and then when the student names appear, they will answer the questions, and the other student also can voluntarily give the answer to you for the rest of the class. So this will make the student alerts all the time. So you have to post questions, give wait time, and then you can choose the name randomly. And then the type of questions you give also, you have to make sure that you are giving a questions. Bear in mind that your question can be a less complex questions or more complex questions, which is for less complex question, the student can formulate it in a short amount of time with some facts that they know, with some knowledge that they know. But in more complex, they have to analyze and combine everything they know into a new uh what is it, sentences. Yeah, for example, less complex questions. Tell me, Lou, if you sat down to breakfast, what things at the breakfast table would most likely contain the element of sodium? And then there is only one answer to this on the table. Oh yeah, it could be salt. Yeah. But in the second question, for example, for more complex, look, what are some forms of element sodium in our universe? This can be several answers, and it's a complex thing. They have to think about anything related to sodium in the universe. Yeah. Second one about the less complex. Yeah. For example, after the death of Lenny in the story we are reading, what happened to the other main character? This is only one stage, affect. So one linear story. Yeah. So after this, what happened? Okay. So this is simple because they have already read the book, and then it could be like answered according to the memory of their own. But this kind of question, for example, what is an example of dramatic irony in the story we are reading? So of course they have to understand what is irony, and then added with dramatic. They have to define that in their head, and then they have to assign this dramatic irony definition into some story inside of the book. Okay, so this sequence of story, they have to find a specific moment, and that story that is according to the definition of dramatic irony. Yeah. Next, questions of less complex. After thinking about the words photo and synthesis, what do you think photosynthesis mean? So this is a very simple questions. Photo means light, synthesis means creating. So from this, the synthesis means you create something out of the light, for example. And for these other more complex questions, how does photosynthesis support plant life? Yeah, so not only you define the photosynthesis, but you have to connect this photosynthesis into plant life. Yeah, what does plant needs to be alive? Yeah, and then in which of the that needs is being supported by photosynthesis. Yeah, so this kind of questions connect two concept, and then they have to make a reason on how these two concept connected. Next, Ted, if we have the equation 10 equals to 2 over x, do you find x by multiplying or dividing? So the answer is by multiplying, and then continue with dividing. Yeah. But the teacher gave a hint on how to solve these questions. Yeah. give a hint. Yeah, dividing and multiplying, yeah, which is like, oh, I have heard about this, and then they can try it by themselves, and then voila, because of the hint, they can answer these questions. This is less complex. While the other questions, type of questions like this, said, can you solve this problem for x? 10 equal to 2 over x. And in this type of questions, there is no hint, and the student have to gather information by themselves. Yeah. So yeah, from this, we get the idea of less complex and more complex questions. Here's the characteristic of more and less complex questions. Yeah. So let's start with more complex questions for each category, and then we also will discuss the less complex questions at the same category as more complex. For example, yeah, here require student to generalize the content to new problems. Yeah, so you know a concept, and then you put that concept into a new problem, and then how to solve that problem from your knowledge. This is complex. For the simple one, it's like just asking the student to recall task relevant to your knowledge. So they have already know about the knowledge, and they just to read aloud the knowledge they have. Next is for the most complex questions, stymie, mystify, and challenge in ways that do not have predetermined answers. Yeah. So this is like open-ended questions, which is like you can formulate any question, any answer that you can think of, the student can think of, and the student can answer in different ways. While for the less complex questions, use specific and concrete example, setting, and object with which students are familiar, which is like a very specific type of condition they know. Next, deliver in a context of an investigation or problem that is broader than the questions itself. Yeah. So yeah, the question will be like more like expanding. The area of questions will be expanding, and then the student have to think about what happened outside of the usual area. In the less complex questions, use a step-by-step approach in which each question is narrower and more specific than preceding one. This is less complex. For more complex, ask student to go deeper, clarify, and provide additional justification or reason for the answer they provide. Yeah. So after so like after the student explain, they have to also give the argument or the proof of their uh, answer. While for the less complex question, rephrase or reiterate the answer to previous questions, which means that they have already get the answer in a certain question, certain sentences, or textbook answer, and they have to reword everything according to their own sentences. Next, for more complex questions, use more concept by asking students to see how their answer may apply across various settings and object. Okay, you adding more concept, and then can they apply this? Can their answer also be correct in a different situation? Next, for the less complex questions, suggest one or two probable answers that lead students in the right direction. So yeah, in this case, the teacher gives some hints to the student about the answer. Yeah. Next are part of a sequence of questions that build to higher and more complex concept, patterns, and abstraction. So the questions build a more complex understanding of a concept. Like for example, force in definition in elementary school, it is like just a push or a pull, but in middle school, a force can be what is it? A cause to an object to accelerate, a mass of object to accelerate because of the force. And then for a higher level, for example, high school, it's the change of momentum. And then the same concept, but with the bigger understanding of it. Yeah, because basically some of the concept is very complicated, but they reduce the definition or the situation accordingly for the student level. But yeah, because of that, we have to create a questions that is showing the broader understanding of a concept. Yeah. And then for the less complex questions are placed in the context of a game with point and reward. Yeah. So it's like a gamification. So the questions will be how fast the student can answer. Usually it doesn't require a student to think too long. So it's going to be like a very fast paced. Right. Now, in giving questions, some of the teacher prefer to do it like from a very narrow questions and then going to a more general one, while the other teacher going from general questions and then going to a specific questions. So yeah, it can be also be varied according to how you ask the questions. Yeah. But remember that the basic of the question sequence involves structuring, soliciting, and reacting. So structuring it's by yourself, soliciting is giving the questions to the student, and then the student answer, and then you have to react to the student answer. But there are so many type of sequence that you can use actually. So, for example, the first sample here, what do astronauts wear on the moon? And then the student said that, oh, spacesuit. And then you have to make sure that this next question will give the student hint. Why the astronaut wear spacesuit? But next question is like, so what element in our atmosphere must not be present on the moon? Yeah. So what does questions means that this will focus the student about why astronaut use spacesuit. Why can be like at the Earth? Because in the Earth we can breathe the oxygen in the atmosphere. So in the moon, because we have to wear spacesuit, and then the oxygen is provided in spacesuit. So in the moon there are no atmosphere, for example, oxygen or carbon, oxygen, and so on and so on. Next type of questions, for example, this is like from specific to more general, and then here is more general to specific. If the native Alaskan originally came from Siberia on the Asian continent, how do you suppose they got to Alaska? So this question is like, how? They do not have the answer yet. But from the next questions, they will have the idea on how to answer that. Because in the first question, they are confused. They have no idea how this Asian people can get across the sea and then go to the North America. So next question from the teacher is, we studied Bering Strait, which is separates North America and from Asia. About how wide is the water between these two continents at the closest point? So now the question is more specific, because the student now can, from previous lesson, they know the distance between this land. Yeah? About 60 miles. The little and big Diomede Island are in between. So in between of the land, there are an island, two islands. And then from this information now, the teacher add more questions, specific questions. Yeah. If this example of water were completely if this expanse of water were completely frozen, yeah, which some scientists believe it was years ago, how might Asian have come to the North American continent? So from these more specific questions, the student can now imagine that, oh, people can pass this the frozen sea, so they can move from Asia to America. So this type of question sequence, it's called funneling. Funneling is like adding condition of increasing specificity to a questions. So if you look at this type of question, this is from general to more specific questions, while this one is from specific go directly to general. Yeah. So from that example, I give you is like there are two type of teaching according to how you structure the questions. It is called the inductive teaching, from facts to generalization, and then deductive teaching is from generalization to facts. So what do teachers and students do in inductive teaching? Yeah. This teacher provide example of a certain facts, principle, or concept, and generalization is drawn regarding them. So giving the specific fact, and then they generalize the answer. Students are given additional example as well as non-examples of specific facts, principle, or concept, and the teacher guides student to in determining pertinent or significant common data among these example that align with the generalization. Students are also led to characteristics that point to non-examples. And the teacher and student interpret the observation they have made and discuss the generalization to ensure it differentiates examples from non-examples. Yeah. Samples is something that is correct with the terms of or definition, but non-example is not. The different type of example of non-real opposed with the sample. Yeah, opposed with the example. That is inductive from facts to generalization, but in deductive teaching, the teacher shares the generalization that students are to test. Yeah, so they give the generalization, the concept themselves, and then now from that the teacher identifies related facts, principle, concept that can support the generalization. So after you have this generalization, you just put some sample to prove that generalization is correct. Yeah? Next, the students test the generalization by posing questions regarding its validity, forming a hypothesis, and making a prediction that they can prove or disprove. Yeah. And students observe and collect data as to test their hypothesis, gathering materials and data, and setting up even to make their observation. So basically, the generalization is like you giving the hypothesis and the student are trying to prove that hypothesis. Next is student analyze their data and determine if their prediction is accurate and supported by the data or even observed. And then at last, the teacher leads student to determine if they can conclude the generalization is true in context in which it was tested, and the generalization may be refined based on recorded observation and proven events. So if someone say that, oh, in physics, everything is like inductive. Not really. We sometimes as we formulate hypothesis with this hypothesis, which is like can be proven or disproved. But another example, for example, in biology, most of them are inductive, so they have a lot of data, and then they formulate a generalization for more broader sample. And then next is what level of questions are used. So in this case, we are going to discuss about the cognitive level of the questions. Yeah, we know that there are at least 6 of them. In this one is the Bloom taxonomy without revision yet. No, this is not Anderson, because in Anderson the synthesis will be the last one and the evaluation will be the 5th. Yeah. But that's okay. That's okay. So question clarification sim. So it will be um, divided into how much complex the questions is. Yeah. And I believe some of you will already get this from the university teaching, but then again I'm going to remind you about this. So level of behavioral complexity, there are 6 of them. Knowledge, which means that you can remember these facts, and comprehension is understanding of the facts, so you explain, or the student can explain in their own words and their understanding. And next is application or transferring, so apply your knowledge into solve a problem. Next is analysis, is relating from one concept to another concept. Next is synthesis, creating is like combining several concepts to create or produce a new original idea. And then next is judging or evaluation. So in the knowledge and remembering, the student is able to remember or recall information and recognize facts, terminology and rules. Instructional processes that by repetition and memorization. And in the questions, can use the keywords as define, describe, identify. Yeah. And the next for comprehension is like the student is able to change the form of a communication by translating or rephrasing what has been read or spoken. So basically paraphrasing, yeah. And instructional processes like explanation and illustration, this is like the student have to do. And then keywords to ask the question is like summarize, paraphrase, or rephrase. Yeah. So this is a keyword that are used in comprehension questions. Next is an application questions. The student is able to apply the information they learn to a context different from the one in which it was learned. So instructional process that student is doing, practice and transfer. So the keyword is apply, use, or employ. Yeah. Next, analysis or relating. The student is able to break a problem down into its component part and to draw relationship among the part. Yeah. So the instructional processes that students have to do is induction and deduction, which is like induction is like forming a general forming a concept from several facts, and deduction is like you formulate this hypothesis and prove it with the sample. Okay. Next, the keywords is like to relate, to distinguish, to differentiate. Yeah. Right. Next is synthesis or creating. The student is able to combine parts to form a unique or novel solution to a problem. Yeah, this is in the instructional processes that students do is like divergence and generalization. Yeah, they can formulate, compose, produce, which is like creating an original or a novel idea. Yeah. And then the last but not least, evaluation or judging. The student is able to make decision about the value of worth of methods, ideas, people, or product according to express criteria. So instructional process is discrimination and inference. So appraise, yeah. So appraise means like uh, they have to have their own taste because from the experience and so on and so on. And next is decide, which is one is better than the other, and justify why you choose this, why you choose that. I think that's that for this session. I'm going to remind you to do your assignment. I'll be waiting the assignment on Saturday, the latest. So on Sunday, I will check the assignment and give a feedback on the next day. So you can type s.id /LP sample. LP stands for lesson plan. So if you type that in your browser, you will be directed to the Google form filling. Yeah, and you can download the sample file of or the template, and then you can fill that according to your subject and classroom that you choose. I think that's that for today. Thank you very much. Wallahumma fiq ila aqwamit thoriq. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.